From the Delta Sky Club
Welcome back, Miss Klein.
to the Jet Bridge, Delta Airlines relies on 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to power operations and serve customers faster. Together, we're putting 5G into the hands of ground staff so they can better assist on-the-go travelers with real-time information throughout the airport. This is elevating customer experience. This is Delta Airlines with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Have you heard about the 2018 study that showed half of prenatal vitamins tested had unacceptable levels of heavy metals? No? Well, now you have. I'm Kat, mother of 3 and founder of Ritual, the company making traceability the new standard in the supplement industry. I remember staring at my prenatal vitamins and finding all these things I was trying to avoid. High amounts of heavy metals, synthetic colorants, and unnecessary ingredients. So, at 4 months pregnant, I quit my job and started Ritual because I believe that all women deserve to know what they're putting in their bodies and why. I'm so proud of our prenatal vitamin. The ingredients are 100% traceable, it's third-party tested for microbes and heavy metals, and recently received the Purity Award from the Clean Label Project. You see, we trace like a mother because, let's be honest, no one cares quite like a mother. But don't just take my word for it. Trace for yourself with 25% off at ritual.com/prenatal.
It's time to get inside the Giants Huddle.
Let's go, let's go, let's go.
On Giants.com.
I like it, I like it, I like it.
And the Giants mobile app.
Boom, give me some juice.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's roll.
Welcome to this bi-week edition of the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmeelk, joined by Paul Dottino. We just walked out of Joe Schoen's at the bye state of the team type of press conference thing on Tuesday afternoon. And Paul, me and Matthew Sytak kind of warned people about this on Big Blue Kickoff on Tuesday afternoon. In a solo press conference without the head coach there, you were not going to get any big-time proclamations at this press conference about changes in lineups or moves because that's a coach's decision.
Correct.
So we didn't get that as we kind of expected, but we did get a lot from Joe Schoen here about how he's thinking about the team and how he's thinking about where this team-building process is at. Now 2.5 seasons into him being the team's general manager.
Yeah, specifically, John, he said, like what Coach Dable said the other day, this is a whole week of evaluations, trying to figure out how the Giants can turn the tide, understanding that nobody is happy with the 2-8 record. I mean, he made that, clear about 5 or 6 times during the presser.
At least a half a dozen, yes.
You know, and at the same time, also pointing out at least 2 or 3 times that the team is 1-5 in close games, which really disturbs him because they haven't been very good in the red zone. He understands that, knows that in a lot of other offensive and defensive categories, he flat out said, we're like middle of the pack.
Yeah, I think 19th and 23rd are the 2 numbers he gave, depending on what metric you want to look at.
But in those spots, it just hasn't gotten done. He's like, we got to find a way to finish games, and that's what they're really concentrating on.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what kind of got him is that, you know, the team is competitive in these games.
Yes.
They're playing in a bunch of one-score games, but they're not figuring out a way to finish them, and that's what he said they'll talk a lot about this week, trying to figure out how to finish some of these games. Focus on the red zone is one thing he talked about, Paul. But he said it's been different things in different games that have sunk this team, which is what we've talked about on our programming here. Some weeks it's special teams errors. They allowed a punt return for a touchdown against the Steelers. I don't need to chronicle all the missed field goals, the injuries at the specialist position.
The drop passes.
The drop passes is another one. The fumble in overtime against the Panthers. The interceptions in the red zone
untimely penalties
against the Panthers. The Giants have not won the turnover battle over the course of this year. The penalties. The defense not being able to get off the field. The Commanders running out the clock against the defense in the game just 2 weeks ago. Go down the list. There's been different things each week that have prevented them from closing games, which for Joe Schoen has been very frustrating.
Well, and I think that's why he made a very strong point to say that this is a very young team, and you know that there's going to be some painful moments as you're trying to move the young team along through the process and to get them to grow, which is why he also emphasized that it's important to win games during this next 7-game stretch because he wants those guys to experience winning ways so that they can build off of it.
Yeah, he talked about trying to change the culture, is that you need a culture of winning, so you're not, when you get into a close game, you're thinking, we're going to win this game.
Right.
You're not thinking, here we go again. And that's what it was. We've talked about this, the dichotomy of what 2022 looked versus 2024. When they were a close game in 2022, they're like, all right, well, how are we going to win this game? We're going to figure out a way to win it. Let's go win this game. In 2024, it's, oh man, here we go again. What way are we going to screw it up this time? And you need to try to figure out a way to flip that switch back to what you had in 2022.
Yeah, and the only way to do that is to finish some of these close games off with clutch execution. And how they're going to find that, they don't even know right now. As he said, the entire staff, everybody is on this trying to evaluate what it is they can do to make that thing happen.
Yeah, and he said the focus right now is on the next 7 games this year.
Yeah.
While they're obviously planning ahead for 2025, that's not going to be the priority with whatever decisions they make. Those were his words. And he also said, and I'm sure fans aren't going to like this, he does not think this team is as far away as their record might indicate. He thinks they're better than the record, and frankly, they've probably played overall better than the record, moving the football. You talk about the rankings that he mentioned in offense and defense, and I'll go through our full self-scout, guys. Next Monday or Tuesday, we have Big Blue kickoffs. There's no game to react to, so I'm going to try to do a little like mid-season team analysis here and kind of go through some stuff on both sides, and we'll go through all the numbers, all the advanced statistics of where this team is. That's why he thinks a few different additions, a few different tweaks, that you can turn this thing around relatively quickly with just a few moves here or there, that he does not think they're far away. And I know fans coming off the bed here last year when they were 6-11, only 2-8 at the bye week this week. I understand why you guys think that's crazy and you don't want to hear it. But week to week, game to game, they have been in all these games. They've been close games, except again for the Eagles game and the Vikings game, where a couple plays here or there, a lot of these games could have been a lot of different.
I think the 2 points to kind of build off of that particular item, John, is that he did say maybe the playoff season of 2022 may have masked some of the issues with the team, and that perhaps that was part of some of the mistakes that he may have made that he wish he had back, because it's also part of the growing process of being a general manager. You have to make decisions. Not everybody's going to like all your decisions. Not everyone's not going to like all the decisions, but you have to go through them. And I think he pointed to this number, John. There were 2 numbers he gave us today, which indicates how strongly he feels about the immediate future of this team. He said 19 starters of the 22 are under contract for next year. And then he said 41 of the 53 are going to be are under contract going into next year. And he said, so that's going to give this team some level of consistency. He stressed that as a very important factor moving forward.
Yeah, I want to get back to that 22 conversation in a second. But first, I do want to touch on the quarterback situation, because there were a ton of questions about that. I know that's the lead, and if they would have announced anything big, that would have been the first thing we talked about on the show, obviously. But Joe Schoen, this was the line he used. Whatever move they make at quarterback will be a football decision. He was pressed on that, and Pat Leonard asked him a couple questions late, and he basically said, yeah, it's a football decision trying to win football games, and that's going to be what guides the decision. Now, what incorporates into a football decision, that's something that was not necessarily specifically communicated, so take that however you like. They tried to push him on that, and he really didn't get into more details on that. So whatever the decision they make will be football related, and obviously there's a lot of things that are football related in terms of building a team. So we'll see whatever decision they make. I assume we're going to know on Monday or Wednesday, so I know fans are very anxious to find out what they're going to do with the quarterback position, since Brian Daboll left that open to interpretation at his press conference on Monday. We'll have to wait and see till next week on what decision they make there.
I'm glad you just mentioned Brian Daboll, too, because it's important to understand that he also gave Brian Daboll a very strong vote of confidence, saying that the one thing you can see right now about this team is that they are playing together, and the locker room is together. And he is very pleased with the way that Brian Daboll has handled these players, even though the record is not what anybody wants.
You're ready for a change. Payday comes early with Citizens, so go to that retreat. New You moves to the country. Now you're raising goats and launching a lifestyle brand. Are you ready for all that life brings?
The best part of football season? Checking out the post-game stats. Which wideouts scored more than 2 touchdowns? Which QBs threw for less than 350 yards? Think you can pick who will do what before kickoff? Then play Pick 6 from DraftKings, an official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app. Select between 2 and 6 players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. It's that simple. And for all first-time Pick 6 players, check this out. New customers play $5 on your first pick set, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code DK1. That's code DK1 for new customers to play $5 on your first pick set, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Non-withdrawable. Pick 6 credits. Expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
He also said he doesn't have any regrets on what they did with the quarterback situation in the offseason. He was asked specifically about that. If you watched Hard Knocks, they did try to bring Tyrod Taylor back. The Jets went over the top on him, on Tyrod Taylor.
Well, he said that's the part of free agency you can't control.
And there are some things you can't control. Russell Wilson was asked about specifically. And again, there are some things where the player's priorities have to match what you're doing
it's
here.
It's about a fit.
And clearly, I think Russell Wilson knew that in Pittsburgh there was a better chance to start sooner. So all things being equal, that's where he was going to choose, which is something that's out of the Giants' control. So
and Russell Wilson got what he wanted, John.
He did. He's playing well. And,
yes,
and again, he didn't say that directly. That's John Schmeelk's interpretation. If you want to, Joe Schoen, I'm sorry if I'm interpreting you incorrectly, but that's how I interpreted that comment, where it's out of your control. What the player wants has to match up what the player wants. So couple other things I want to touch on, Paul, going back to your comment about 2022. Joe Schoen was very clear. He said, look, when you're 2-8, everyone has a hand in this.
Yes.
Because he was asked specifically about all these individual people. It's the only reason why I'm bringing them up individually. From myself, and he said it starts with me at the top, to the coach, to the quarterback, to all the players, the assistant coaches, everyone. Everyone has a hand in this in being 2-8. And he said, look, I have not been perfect. I have not batted 1,000 in the draft. I wish I could. I haven't. And to your point, Art Stapleton, I thought, asked one of the better questions of the press conference about 2022, and this is something we've talked about on our shows too. 2022 was a very unexpected year. We all expected that to be a tear-down year and a reset year, not a make the playoffs and win a playoff game year. And Art Stapleton asked if, this last year and this year has looked differently because the team made the playoffs in 2022, and did that alter how some decisions that you made? And Joe Schoen said, look, yeah, once you re-sign the quarterback, maybe you try to, I think the word he uses, accelerate things.
Yes.
And there are some decisions that he regrets coming off of that year. And we talked about, and he was asked, what decisions, Joe? And he would not give that answer, not surprisingly. But we talked about coming off of that year, how if you look at the overall metrics that year, Paul, they probably weren't as good as what the record would indicate in terms of, point differential and things like that, and just overall, roster quality and such.
They got a lot of good bounces and a lot of takeaways.
Yes, and a ton of close games. They were +3 that year in terms of turnover ratio, but their close game record was off the charts, and that's something that we all talked about was not necessarily sustainable, right? But at the same time, you win a playoff game, you have a young quarterback who's going to become a free agent, you have a star running back that's going to be a free agent, and it's very difficult to break up a team and its core when you just won a playoff game.
Correct.
It's a very difficult thing to do.
First playoff win in a few years.
When you see not just a few years, that goes back to 2011.
I know.
It's a long time, over 10 years, over a decade. And look, could he have come out and said, look, you know what? We think this team wasn't any good. We won the playoff game. You think the fans that are season ticket holders want to hear that? You think, frankly, ownership wants to hear that?
Don't think the players or coaches wanted to hear that
I don't
either.
think. How do you think the players would feel?
I know.
You got these guys that's a great point, Paul. These guys that just won a playoff game, and you're ripping apart what was the heart and soul of that team in that offseason. It's a very difficult thing to do.
Very hurtful. And he did say you have to keep the locker room in mind when you make decisions.
And he said, look, that record might have masked, and you said this before, masked some deficiency in things that maybe he didn't see as clearly as he should have.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some decisions coming off of that if he could do differently, he would do differently now. So, and we talked about that, right? And the comparison I always made, if you go back, what season? I think it was the 2020 Knicks season. And it was one where Julius Randle came out. I think it was the COVID season, actually, right? It was the COVID season. That would have been the 2021 season.
Wasn't that when they finished with the 4th seed in the East?
That was the 21-22 season. And there was the COVID year, so there was no fans in the crowd in the first 3 quarters of that season. And the Knicks played great, right? And the next season, they add Evan Fournier, Kemba Walker, right? Was that next year?
They spent a lot of money.
And you add all these pieces, and you think you're going to take the next step, and you just take a big step back. Because for whatever... everything that worked the year before, and it happens from year to year, doesn't work the following year. Now, the Knicks have been able to bounce back from that, and they're a good team again, right? Mm-hmm. The Giants, I think, are in the process of now trying to
Bounce
back from that. And it hasn't happened as quickly for them. They haven't found their Jalen Brunson.
No.
So, and I think it's just interesting. And Joe said he's actually thought a lot about that. And he said, look, no one is harder on themselves for their decisions than I am. He loses sleep over it. He thinks of them at night. And he said, look, some of those decisions that I wish I could have made better, and he's not batting 1,000 in the draft either. He mentioned specifically the premium draft picks, so a guy like Evan Neal at 7, which, they're trying to rehabilitate him, but they're not there yet. And you got to hit those premium picks. He gets all that. So I just wanted to be clear that fans that maybe you're going to hear excerpts of this and not listen to the press conference with like, oh, well, Shane says everything's great, everything's fine. He didn't do anything wrong. That was not the case. He definitely stood in front of the group and said, look, this is on me. Some of the stuff is my fault, and there are some things I definitely want to do better.
I thought he was very honest and very frank in his evaluation of everything that has gone on within the building. And I do think it is important right here while you're talking about what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years, you have to mention the fact that he had premium picks used for Evan Neal and on Tay Banks, who have both caught their shares of criticism for various reasons.
But he said he still does believe in Tay Banks, though.
And that's the important thing. He said, there was the one effort issue against Philly, which is the only thing that he really kind of marked off on Banks.
And he referenced the minor one against Dallas, which I didn't think was that big of a deal.
Right.
But yes.
And said that, if you look at Banks, he's got the ability to shadow top receivers in this league. And he's got confidence, he's got work ethic, he's got belief. He's very high on Tay Banks' future.
He's just got to be consistent. And he did mention the change in scheme.
He did.
Which I thought was interesting from year one to year two.
Well, we also knew that Banks was a press cover corner, and the change in scheme was going to create an adjustment for him. But then talking about Evan Neal, now, folks, you remember how high a pick he was, and he was going to be a franchise bookend tackle opposite Andrew Thomas. John, I really felt good for Joe Schoen up there today because he was able to actually sit there and say Evan Neal played well last week. And I'm happy for him. And he's worked hard.
Especially he said better in the run game than pass pro.
Better in the run game. And he's practiced very hard. He's practiced well.
He's had a good attitude.
Energy. He's had a good attitude. He finally got a chance, and he put up. And he said, now we got to see where we go from here. And I think, that was a matter of pride, I think, for Joe as well as for Evan, to see Evan put something good on tape again after being out since January because of the surgery on his ankle.
Giants Huddle Podcast is brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. From game day celebrations to your everyday financial needs, Big Blue fans can get the most out of every moment with Citizens. Learn more at citizensbank.com/Giants. He was also asked about, I don't know if he was asked specifically about if there were regrets, but he was asked about letting two players or a couple players go this past offseason that have had success here, and Xavier McKinney and Saquon Barkley. He did not address really their success elsewhere, but he did say he
not
liked
those two players.
But he did say he likes the guys that they brought in to replace them without mentioning those players by name. He mentioned Tyrone Tracy and Tyler Nubin by name as two players are young that he thinks have done a nice job stepping in for those two guys, even though they're having success elsewhere.
Also mentioned very happy with Neighbors as one of the young players that you can move forward with. But remember something now. The Giants reallocated their funds to the offensive line. And he did spend quite a few minutes, John, today speaking about the rebuild offensive line. They had to devote resources to that. He mentioned Illuminor as a very important part because he was a flex guy who could fit in at different spots.
Yeah, and to your point, he was pressed on whether or not he regrets going into the season with Josh Azudu as the left tackle, and he goes, well, guys, that wasn't necessarily the plan, which is something we've said here.
Right.
Remember, Evan Neal was on his way back, right? He was starting to practice in the spring. Then something happened. It's never been clear what happened.
Right.
But he stopped practicing.
Yep.
And we didn't see him again for a few months. He didn't get ready to go again until the end of training camp.
Yep.
So, and Joe indicated, which is I think we've tried to explain to you guys here, is the plan was that if there was an injury at left tackle with Andrew Thomas, Illuminor's the left tackle and Neal's your right tackle. Or if Neal's really good, Neal's your right tackle and Illuminor's just your swing guy, or he's playing guard, you move him outside, however they wanted to handle that. And no one asked about the Greg Van Roten thing, but he's played really well the last few weeks, so I think it's worked out bringing him in. But that wasn't necessarily the plan to have Azudu as the backup left tackle. It was that Evan Neal injury and whatever happened to make his absence longer than I think anyone expected it to be, that kind of made that left tackle plan fizzle out a little bit.
It did, and I also think it's important to note that Joe Schoen also mentioned Carmen Brasillo and the good job that he has done with this offensive line. Let's face it, guys, the Giants' offensive line has been such a bugaboo now for how many years, and Brasillo's come in here, and it's not easy to melt three new starters into an offensive line in a matter of, a couple of months? And he has certainly done a solid job of getting these guys to play at a proficient level.
You love turf. You're good at it. So you start a turf biz. Business grows, your savings grow. Become the most celebrated name in turf. Are you ready for all that life brings?
Did you know a 2018 study showed half of prenatal vitamins tested had unacceptable levels of heavy metals? I'm Kat, mother of 3 and founder of Ritual. When I was 4 months pregnant, I couldn't find a prenatal I could trust, so I created my own. Ours is made traceable, third-party tested for heavy metals, and recently earned the Purity Award from the Clean Label Project. But don't just take my word for it. Get 25% off at ritual.com/prenatal.
All right, last 2 items here before we say goodbye. He did said he was asked about the trade deadline this year and the fact there was no movement. He said, look, our trade deadline philosophy has not changed, which to me means they just not get the value in the offer that they would expect. He said, we take calls on everybody. If you call about a guy, we'll talk to you, but obviously they did not get the type of offer they wanted to move some of the guys that were on expiring deals.
Which tells you that they weren't looking to shop anyone. It was like, if the phone rings and somebody bowls us over with a price, we'll listen to it. But he wasn't looking to move anybody, with the as the impetus of trying to make a deal.
All right, and then finally he said, look, despite the record, I see progress, and I've made progress in a lot of different areas despite what the record looks like, which is why I think he still believes in what's going on here. He was asked specifically, based on his conversations with the ownership, if he expects to be back, and he simply said, yes, I expect to be back.
Yep.
So for fans that think there's going to be some sweeping front office change in the offseason, we've been trying to tell you that we didn't see that happening either. But John Mara said he does not anticipate it earlier in the year in the offseason making any moves, and Joe Schoen said he expects to be back. Obviously, there's 7 games to go. A lot, things can change. And to quote your great Bill Parcells quote, "I reserve the right to change my mind." Because
that is one of them. That is one of them.
That's the way it works. But he does say he expects to be back, and frankly, I think both of us have expected that for some time.
Yes, saying that he trusts the staff and the process, always talks with the owners, and that's something, by the way, Brian Dable always says the communication here between the front office and him has been consistent throughout, ever since he got here. And again, he used that word confidence a number of times.
Yeah, and this will be the final thing we say before we say goodbye. You guys can golf and enjoy your bye week. You won't see these two faces again until Monday.
Good for you.
You're welcome. That even though, again, he hasn't hit 1,000 in the draft, no one ever does. That's the nature of the draft. He didn't say that. That's me saying that second part. He just said, I haven't batted 1,000 in the draft. I wish I could, but I haven't. He trusts the process and the people that are here making the decisions. I think I said this earlier. I just want to reiterate it because I said this on Tuesday's Big Blue Kickoff Live with Matt, where even though all the decisions haven't worked, and Joe said as much, whether it was a draft or free agency, all the decisions haven't worked.
Right.
The theory and the methods behind them, I think, make sense. Whether it's not paying big money for a running back, not paying money for a non-premium position like a safety, you can find guys in the draft that can step in. Now, is Tyler Lindman as good as Xavier McKinney is this year with all the picks? No, he's not there yet. But maybe in a year he will be. We don't know that. Tyrone Tracy's certainly been extremely productive since he moved into the lineup. Yes, he has. Understanding you need weapons for your quarterback, you need to rush the passer, the acquisition of Brian Burns, you need to be better up front, improvement of the offensive line. Finally, something we've been calling for 10 years. It's finally gotten here. The offensive line. Is it great? No. Does it allow you to run your offense any way you want?
What's my word, John?
Functional.
There you go.
It's functional. So I think in those ways that he sees progress and he trusts the people in the process that have put some of that progress into effect. And with some changes here, and, obviously a lot of people are going to focus on the quarterback position. That could be one of the changes. We don't know the answer to that question
no, we
right
don't.
now. Joe would not answer that. He was asked specifically about Daniel Jones' future after this year. He would not go there. He said, we'll worry about that after the year. That's where we're at. And we'll see if the Giants can continue to build and frankly try to turn this thing around. Because, as he said many times, at 2-8, no one's happy with the record. No one's happy, and everyone has their hand in it.
Yeah, the only way to do it is one game at a time, John. And you'll remember when they beat Seattle.
And one move at a time.
Exactly. And when they beat the Seahawks in the Pacific Northwest, they came down to a blocked field goal by Isaiah Simmons. That has probably been the most clutch and maybe the only clutch play the Giants have made down the stretch to finish a game. They need to find more of those.
Absolutely, and they'll try to do it against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They come to town on Sunday, November 24th, and then a quick turnaround at Dallas on Thanksgiving on the 28th. And Dak Prescott, by the way, out for the year with that hamstring.
Yes.
So that'll either
Cooper
be
Rush, I guess, huh?
At that point, if next week goes
Trey
bad
Lance?
for Dallas, I would not be shocked. And then you better stop the run because that dude can run.
Yeah.
So you better be careful, though. Anyway, we'll have plenty of time to talk about those games in the coming weeks. The Giants Huddle podcast was brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. Citizens will donate $750 to the Giants Foundation for each scoring drive during the 2024 season. Hopefully there's a lot more of them in the final 7 games than there were in the first 10. Learn more at citizensbank.com/Giants. For Paul Dottino, for Pearson Butler, I am John Schmeelk. Thanks for being with us in the Giants Huddle podcast. Enjoy your bye weekend, folks. Try to relax. Have some fun. We'll see you next week.
Have you heard about the 2018 study that showed half of prenatal vitamins tested had unacceptable levels of heavy metals? No? Well, now you have. I'm Kat, mother of 3 and founder of Ritual, the company making traceability the new standard in the supplement industry. I remember staring at my prenatal vitamins and finding all these things I was trying to avoid: high amounts of heavy metals, synthetic colorants, and unnecessary ingredients. So, at 4 months pregnant, I quit my job and started Ritual because I believe that all women deserve to know what they're putting in their bodies and why. I'm so proud of our prenatal vitamin. The ingredients are 100% traceable, it's third-party tested for microbes and heavy metals, and recently received the Purity Award from the Clean Label Project. You see, we trace like a mother because, let's be honest, no one cares quite like a mother. But don't just take my word for it. Trace for yourself with 25% off at ritual.com/prenatal.